Here with us at the table is Diane Swonk, KPMG's chief economist. Diane, it's great to have you in-house, first of all. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
We should make this like a traveling show or something. I don't know. But for the time being and ahead of the Fed's move tomorrow, why do you think, last time around they ended up cutting rates by 2019, so tariffs were not that inflationary. Why do you think this could be different?
So, in 2019, there's actually a great Fed study on this. We saw that the price increases on the specific goods, not only washers went up in price, but dryers, because they were bought together. So there was a contagion effect. However, it was a different economy, and the increase in tariffs was a very narrow increase. The actual effective tariff rate, just a little blip up in the national tariff rate. They're talking about a much bigger breadth of tariffs, but we're against a backdrop. Context matters. We have embers of inflation are still burning. We've not yet beat inflation, and we have those longer supply chains, which were made in part to avert existing tariffs and to hedge against political risk, but that makes them more vulnerable to supply shocks and retaliation, and we're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. If we do tariffs, countries that retaliate are going to try to exactly hit those supply chains.
Hit us where, so there's that issue. I've also heard, Steve, people say last time around we got corporate tax cuts, then we got tariffs. So companies were able to absorb the tariff hit a little bit more, maybe not have to pass it along, but the sequencing could be different now. And this almost like psychological effect where now that we've seen costs passed along because of the pandemic, companies and consumers were a little bit more built to do that.
I actually call it the cultural dimension of inflation, which is back in 2019, you did not raise prices.
No.
Somebody came to you with a price hike. You said, go back and do your numbers again, okay? Because I am not going to go upstairs to Walmart and tell them 5% more. You go give me back 5% less. Now it's a little different. They've done that. The kind of dam has been broken on raising prices. And I think the trouble this time also is people have not forgotten the inflation they had just very recently. And so, I think I yelled at you yesterday and I said, the Fed is not going to make monetary policy on egg prices.
Right.
That's true.
No.
But put together eggs and a little bit higher on gasoline these days, a little bit higher on tariffs, and then they might become concerned about what happens to inflation expectations. And sorry for yelling at you.
Oh, no. I mean, then I had people all day sending me pictures of the egg shortages. I do think psychologically it's a big one right now. But the larger question, I'm glad that you two are here because I can ask it. Even if prices go up, is it inflationary or is it contractionary? So for instance, let's say Mexico-Canada tariffs, which we haven't experienced before, if those are fully passed along, they could raise CPI by a point, according to some estimates.
And slow growth.
Right. Well, but that's my point. So the only way that you get broad-based inflation is either from what? The Fed? I mean, I guess you could argue maybe fiscal. If we don't have an accommodative Fed, then those price hikes are just going to come out of the consumer pocket somewhere else, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, but I think there is this issue of, first of all, we see consumers saying, and this gets to the cultural issue and that we've not forgotten inflation, 67% of the labor force was born after 1982 or 1982 and beyond. They've never experienced inflation until we had this pandemic inflation, but now they do. And you see it in inflation expectations and the fact that they're willing to buy ahead of price hikes in a way that we did not see in 2019. Also in 2019, the damaging effect of tariffs on the manufacturing sector were quite acute. The Federal Reserve has a study of that. So in part, they could look through it as they studied it, the increases in tariffs, because they weren't broad-based and they were targeted, but also it triggered a manufacturing recession as well. So it did not.
I want to back up what you said. There are people out there who say the right response of the Fed to tariffs could be to cut rates.
To ease. That's what I'm wondering.
That is out there as an idea.
Which is dangerous, because if we're wrong and they ease, then that's exactly what would fuel broader inflation. But if they slow the economy, then what are they?
It's why they can't front run.
But I would just point out that if your argument is, should the Fed be hiking rates because tariffs are inflationary or cutting rates because they're contractionary, you haven't yet enunciated a good reason for tariffs. You've given me two lousy reasons.
That's a separate point.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You give me if it's contractionary or inflationary, neither one inures well to the benefit of the economy.
What if it's meant to, stop the hollowing out of the U.S. manufacturing? We've been in this manufacturing recession for years.
And we actually saw, the foreign direct investment into the United States has increased quite dramatically, but that was related to renewables, battery plants, and a lot of subsidies. And those have now been stopped, at least temporarily. That's important because, just saying we're going to reset cards and go back to my childhood, growing up in the Detroit area, where we built vehicles, and we were the vehicle builders of the world. That doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen overnight. And it also happens with a different set of skills of workers. I mean, the UAW contracts that just went through, they had all those pay increases. By the time the contract's over, it's back to 2007 levels of wages.
Wow.
And so, and a lot of manufacturers that I deal with are competing with retailers, which tells you what's happened to manufacturing wages.
Right.
So it's not, you can't go back. And the question is, how can we do something about the fact that we've displaced so many workers and make them feel whole again and make them a part of the economy? And that's where I think the consequences of the last 5 decades of free trade and globalization have come home to roost. We had a brief moment there in the late 90s when income inequalities were narrowing, and consumer confidence, not surprisingly, consumer attitudes hit a record high in January 2000, never hit that again.